Karen Lynn from Rise here. Thank you for joining me. I want to take a look today at that emotional roller coaster that you find yourself on when you are facing the daunting prospect of a life on your own when you've had many years in a relationship. It doesn't matter why that relationship has come to an end. It could be because you're getting divorced, or it could be because your partner has passed. But either way, you find yourself on that emotional roller coaster where your emotions just start to take over. I guess when you're first facing a life on your own and you didn't expect it, it feels like the foundations of your life, like the ground, has just gone from underneath you. Everything that you thought you knew and was secure feels like it's no longer there. And it's a huge change. I mean, it's always difficult when we step out of our comfort zone, but when you find yourself getting divorced or when your partner has passed, it's like somebody has just shoved you out of your comfort zone. And if you're anything like me, I like change to be gentle and slow, one step at a time. Whereas this, when you suddenly find yourself in this position, you've just been shoved, and all of a sudden, life has changed hugely and it can be scary. But also, it brings up all those emotions and puts you well and firmly on an emotional roller coaster that feels like you're doing this. Um, you can feel a number of different emotions in a day. The obvious ones are sadness and anger. Yes, anger is, even if you're grieving, anger can be an emotion that pops up quite regularly. So those two, sadness and anger, are the obvious ones. But you can feel all sorts of emotions. I can remember when I got divorced that I could feel half a dozen different emotions in one day. And I didn't know where the next emotion was coming from. I used to try really hard when I was with other people to, you know, keep it together and not let them know how much I was struggling. But then they'd ask that little question with only 3 words in it. And I found it the hardest question to deal with when I was going through the whole process of divorce. Can you guess what the question is? I'm sure you've had this. The question is, how are you? How are you? And it doesn't matter how much you're trying to hide those emotions. When somebody says, how are you? It's like they suddenly come from inside of you and up and out to the surface. And I found that, gosh, I find it really hard not to cry when somebody said, how are you? So, how do we handle this emotional roller coaster? Well, first and foremost, I have some really good news for you. You do not have to let it control you. It's not something that you've just got to allow to happen. I guess you will in a little way, but I'll explain that later. It's not something where you've just got to go, well, I'm in this situation and my emotions just come as and when they feel like it. I can't do anything about it. And it's not something where you need to hide away from the world while you go through this process because you daren't go out in case, for one reason, somebody says, how are you? All right, so the situation you're in is not a pleasant experience. It isn't. But I promise you that actually what is happening to you now is a transition. It's a transition from a life that you knew where you were in a relationship to a life that you don't yet know, one where you are facing life as a single person. Now, life as a single person is not necessarily any less than life when you're in a relationship. We're sort of told all our lives that happiness comes by, finding the right person, being in a relationship, maybe getting married, but building a life together. We're told that from when we're very young. But that's not necessarily the case. Life as a single person, as I've discovered, is just a different experience. It doesn't have to be worse, it doesn't necessarily have to be better. It's just a different experience. And even if you're, for the next chapter of your life, going to experience life as a single person, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be single for the rest of your life. You might love it and choose that that's what you want. Or you might later on in years to come meet somebody else. But what I would say is, to get through this little bit, you need to find a way to embrace that single life. And to get there, you need to find a way to control your emotions so that they're not controlling you. So, the good news is you don't have to be a slave to the emotional roller coaster. You can start to take more control of your emotions. And in order to do that, there's something that I need to share with you that might sound a little bit woo woo at first, but it will help you to understand how we deal with our emotions. And that little fact, which honestly science does back up, is that we are energetic beings. We are so much more than just the physical body that you see. In fact, our energy goes beyond the physical body that we see. We have we've grown to just believe what we see, but actual fact, there is so much more in the world that we can't see. And the extension of ourselves, the extension of our energy is one of those things. You may use it, you may have found yourselves using it. When you go into a room full of people, and for some reason, there is somebody that you have never met before, you don't know who they are, they look pleasant enough, they're dressed well, but for some reason, you either are incredibly drawn towards them and think, I have got to meet that person. I don't know why, but I am being drawn towards them. Or you think, I have no idea who that person is, but I'm not going anywhere near them. There's something that's just saying, maybe not. When that sort of thing happens, it's your energy body reading their energy body. It is an example in your life of when you are using your energy. And so I want you to just be a little bit open-minded with this at the moment, to think that we are energetic beings. We see the physical, but our energy goes beyond the physical. Now, why do you need to know that? Because emotions are just a type of energy. But emotions are energy that needs to move. So the worst thing we can do with our emotions is to bury them. Now, I know you probably feel right now that you possibly can't bury anything, that your emotions are so overwhelming. And sometimes you feel like you can get lost in your emotions. And there is a reason for that. There is a reason for that. When we get lost in our emotions, it's often because we're adding a story to the emotion as we're feeling it. So we sort of make it bigger, not deliberately. It's just something that we've got into the habit of doing. So you'll feel something and you start to think about why you're feeling that. Even you add a story, and as you add a story, you intensify the emotion. I will go into that in another video. I want to try and keep these videos short, and this one is just an introduction as to the fact that we can control our emotions. And I will give you in the coming videos 3, maybe 4 different little tools that you can use, techniques that you can use to stop the intensity of your emotions, to help you to feel and release the emotions, because that's what we need to do. You need to feel the emotion and release it. Sometimes the emotion has a message for you, but in this case right now, when you're on this emotional roller coaster, I wouldn't be worrying about messages. I would just focus on the fact that you need to feel it and release it. If you can get used to the idea that emotions are energy that just needs to move, and that in a sense that energy is stuck in your body somewhere, and so you need to feel it and release it. If you could get that idea and feel comfortable with that, then the tools that I'm going to give you in the coming videos will make more sense. That said, the tools are very practical. So, whilst this sounds a little bit woo woo, the tools are very practical and things that everybody can do. When I'm sharing these things, my whole intention, because this is how I handled my overwhelm, is to share things in simple steps. Simple steps to get you through this transition. Simple steps to rise above the death of a loved one and into a new life, or simple steps to rise above your divorce and into a new life. So, if you're on the emotional roller coaster, please know you don't have to stay there at that intensity. There are tools coming up in the following videos, which I ask you to take a look at, that will help you with your emotions, so that when somebody says, "How are you?" you can either you can answer them honestly, but you can do it without the overwhelm of the emotion that is stuck inside of you. Emotions can be exhausting, and when you first start to feel them, it is very exhausting. But once you get into the habit of feeling it and releasing it, it won't build up so much. And it means that you have got energy for other things. So you won't feel quite so tired once you start using some of the tools that I'm going to share with you. I hope that's given you food for thought. This is just the first video. So let those ideas sit, maybe sit for 24 hours, and then maybe look at the next video and find out what you can start to do to feel and release those emotions and put you in a calmer place. And you can do that right now, even though you're still in the midst of your divorce or the grieving process. Okay, I'm Karen Lynn. Please do join me in the next video.